Modern-day America, 2025. Though the country had gone through many changes in recent years, one thing remained unchanged: the tension among people and the political divides that were tearing the country apart. Donald Trump, the current president, had returned to the White House after 4 years away from its walls. His policies, ideas, and unyielding rhetoric continued to stir the nation. In this context, Joe Biden, the former president and now part of history, was invited to Stephen Colbert's show. His appearance marked a moment when old, unhealed wounds reopened. "Joe, we've seen you on screen in various roles, as a wise president, as a national leader. But now, with the country changed and Trump on the throne, how do you feel about it?" Colbert asked with an unmistakable curiosity. Laughter in the studio died down, and all eyes turned to Joe Biden. Biden sat in the chair, attentively watching the camera. His face exuded calmness, but a shadow of memories lingered in his eyes. He wasn't afraid to speak the truth, as it had always been his strength. But this question was different. It wasn't just about politics, but about his feelings toward the person who had taken his place. "Trump is the worst president I've ever seen," Joe Biden began, his voice cold but firm, as though he was trying to keep his emotions in check. He didn't just question the foundations of democracy. He showed that true leadership, honesty, and responsibility are not for him. His decisions have torn the country apart, and even now, as he's back on the political throne, he continues the same. The studio froze in silence. All that could be heard was the indifferent hum of the ventilation, as the question lingered in the air. "Why do you feel this way? What exactly did Trump do that you can't forgive?" Colbert asked, trying to get to the heart of the matter. Biden paused. He understood that this wasn't just a response for the show. It was his place in history. "I can't forgive him for not understanding the people. He always put his own interests above those of the country. He divided us instead of uniting us. And now, he continues to do the same. And what angers me most is his attitude toward those who are at the very bottom. I know this isn't about politics or ambition. It's about how you treat your citizens," Biden said. These words rippled through the room like an electric shock. Some in the audience began whispering. Others sat silently, holding their breath. The tension was mounting. "I'm not just a politician. I'm a human being. And it's my responsibility to ensure that every American has the chance to live with dignity. But with Trump, that's impossible." The themes of justice, understanding, and the fight for rights and opportunities became more important than ever. And now, as the political storm raged, Joe Biden had a chance for a new beginning, albeit under different circumstances. "So, Joe, do you really believe there is hope for change in this country?" Colbert asked. Biden raised his gaze and looked into the eyes of everyone present. He knew the road would be difficult. But he also knew that every step forward was a chance to change the situation. "I believe, because even a small step can change a lot." Joe Biden glanced at Stephen Colbert, and his eyes grew more serious. The room suddenly fell silent, as if everyone was waiting for an answer that could change everything. "Stephen, I don't want to hide my opinion," Biden said. "I can't leave all of this unanswered. Maybe I'm not president anymore, but I still have my vision of what's happening in the country. Donald Trump. He's not just unprepared. He's dangerous for the country. His decisions have made us the object of ridicule and distrust in the eyes of the world. And this isn't even about politics, it's about common sense." The audience supported his gaze, although some began to mutter, yet remained silent. Stephen smiled quietly, giving him time. "You say this because Trump won the election, and you." Colbert sensed the tension in Biden's words. His smile disappeared. "You can't deny he had a large base of support among a portion of Americans. I don't think most people would agree with your words." "You know, I'm not used to speaking into a void," Biden continued, his voice becoming deeper and firmer. "As president, I believed in harmony, in the balance that the country is trying to preserve. But Trump? he destroyed it all. And now the country is being torn between those who want to see a strong America and those who blindly follow his destructive rhetoric. The room seemed to freeze. Biden's words were uncomfortable, but true for many, and they had the power to change people's attitudes. I don't want us to stay in the same swamp, Biden continued. I believe that after me, the country would be able to find common ground, to rebuild itself. But we're back in the same dead end, facing the same chaos. Stephen listened carefully, tilting his head, and his gaze softened. Biden was right, even though it was difficult for him to admit. But do you have hope? Stephen finally asked, returning to the question that was on many people's minds. You say the situation is catastrophic, but how do you see the future? Joe paused for a few seconds, taking a deep breath. This was one of those moments when, even in the darkest times, he felt that change could begin, and perhaps it would start with a simple conversation. There is hope. Maybe I'm not president anymore, but I believe in the people. And if people can hear each other, if we learn to treat each other with respect, even when politics divides us, we can find a way forward. It won't be easy, but I still believe in it. The room fell silent again. In this moment, even those who disagreed with his opinion saw that behind Biden's words was not just politics, but a desire to change the country for the better. Meanwhile, behind the scenes of the show, negotiations were already underway about the next steps. Could America restore its unity? Biden had his answers, but were others, particularly those who stood behind Trump, ready to hear them? Though the answer wasn't yet clear, in that moment, Biden felt that perhaps his calmness and ability to engage in dialogue had become the first step toward restoring the country. And even though changing the country was difficult, he knew that starting small, with a simple acknowledgement of the problem, was worth it. The room remained silent, but the tension was palpable. Biden continued standing before the microphone, his expression growing even more serious. He wasn't afraid to go on the offensive, although he knew his words could provoke even more division in the country. Stephen, you want to say there's still hope, Biden replied, staring intently at Colbert. But let's look at the facts. Donald Trump is president now, and you can't deny that his policies threaten the very foundations of what we consider right. I'm not saying he doesn't have support. He does, and that's the scariest part. His rhetoric only divides the nation, not unites it. Stephen paused for a moment, contemplating his words. Then he raised his head again, his eyes showing a challenge. But you can't just dismiss this, Colbert said. You can't ignore the fact that many Americans believe in his methods. You say his policies are dangerous, but for others, they are the answer to their problems. How many times have you been in meetings with voters who supported Trump? What will you tell them? Joe Biden sighed, lowering his head. I understand people want change, but that doesn't mean we have to destroy the country to achieve our goals. Trump sells his policies as simple solutions, promises of quick victories. But it's an illusion that has already led us to the brink of crisis. He paused, looking at Stephen with a cold stare. True victory isn't when the country is torn apart. It's when we come together. But when the president constantly says his opponents are enemies, how can we move forward? When people begin to hate each other over political differences, it's no longer just politics, it's a social catastrophe. Stephen Colbert felt the atmosphere shift, and Biden's words, though harsh, carried a certain truth. He couldn't deny that the country was divided, and that division was felt at all levels. Are you saying that everything he does is a complete disaster? Stephen asked, his tone growing more aggressive. No, Stephen, I'm saying his decisions are a disaster for what we are as a nation. America's true strength isn't in dictating to the world, but in how it supports its citizens while preserving democratic principles. And Trump? He doesn't understand that. He's running the country like his personal business, ignoring the people who are waiting for real change from him. Yes, but his supporters believe he's the only one who can put the country back on the right path, Colbert replied. And that's a big problem, Stephen. The problem is more and more people believe in it, without realizing they're being manipulated. I see how people are deceived, how they follow a man who's only trying to preserve his own power. And in the end, we all lose. The room began to murmur. Most people agreed with Biden, though not all. It was that moment when even those who supported Trump couldn't ignore that the country was indeed on the edge. "So what do you propose, Joe?" Stephen asked, his voice now calmer but no less determined. "How can we fix this?" "We have to start with dialogue, Stephen. A dialogue that doesn't exclude anyone from this process. Only through this can we unite the country and begin the restoration, rather than continue heading in a direction where we'll be divided again, just like we are now." Joe Biden looked out at the room, where there were already many conversations and questions left unanswered. But although the way forward was unclear, he was ready to begin that path, no matter what. He was no longer president, but that didn't mean he had to stop fighting for the country he loved. Joe Biden sighed, feeling the weight of the situation. He knew he wasn't president, but every step he took and every word he spoke mattered. The tension in the room was palpable. All eyes were on him. Stephen Colbert didn't back down, and his questions were sharper than ever. "Do you still think you can change anything when President Trump has a majority in the Senate, when he controls all the executive power? Do you really believe America can unite when people are so polarized?" Colbert asked, his voice serious and somewhat provocative. Biden couldn't hold back, replying immediately, "I won't stand aside while the country falls apart. Trump may be president, but his path is not America's path. He's leading us into darkness, where there is no room for compromise, where every conversation turns into a fight. You can say he has support, but support isn't always the right path." The room grew tense again. Biden understood that his words might seem too harsh to some, but he couldn't stay silent when the country was on the brink of division. And even if Trump was president now, he felt that his mission was to bring back morality and principles. Colbert didn't back down. He looked attentive, a bit irritated, but also eager for more clarity. "So how do you propose to do that?" he asked. "I know you have experience, you were vice president, but now the situation is completely different. This isn't 2008, and Trump isn't someone who wants to work with other politicians. His goal is to divide the country even more to gain more power." Biden paused for a moment, taking a breath. His gaze hardened. "I'm not saying it will be easy, Stephen. But if we don't try to unite people, all we'll get is more violence in the streets, more divisions in society. Trump promises to be a strong leader, but he's turning the country into an arena for battle. The one who has more money, more influence wins, but we forget about those who really need help." Joe took a step forward, as if trying to convey all his determination. "I want America to be great again, but not through fear, not through the dominance of some over others. We must unite the nation, no matter who is in power. Maybe Trump is president now, but that doesn't mean he has the right to dictate everything to us. What matters more than his words are our actions." Colbert paused, his eyes reflecting that he was considering every word Biden had said. "You're right about one thing, Joe," he said, now less aggressively. "Trump is creating a chasm between people. And while we're fighting him, we're forgetting that the real problem is how we can restore trust between people. How can we get back to a time when we could talk without turning everything into a political war?" "And that's why I won't stop," Biden responded with conviction. "I know it's not easy, but if we don't fight for real unity, then who will? The time for talking about compromise and understanding hasn't passed. Because without that, we won't be America anymore. We'll just be a broken nation." The tension in the room reached its peak, but even amidst the disagreement, you could see how people began to reconsider their stance on the situation. Biden didn't back down. And even if Trump was in power, Joe continued to fight for America to become a country where people could live together, despite their differences. The room was stunned by Biden's words, but the atmosphere remained tense. Colbert didn't let up, and his next question came out even sharper. Yes, you want to unite the country, but you're forgetting one important thing, Joe. While you're here talking about unity and morality, Trump and his people are tearing this nation apart. Do you really think your rhetoric stands a chance when he's using all the levers of power and tightly controlling the media, the courts, and even large corporations? This is a fight against windmills, Joe. Biden, though exhausted from the endless arguments, didn't relent. I'm not trying to fight windmills, Stephen, he replied, keeping his composure. I just can't sit by while the country breaks apart due to its own flaws. Yes, Trump has power. Yes, he manipulates, plays on people's emotions and fears. But if we stay silent, he'll keep holding the country by the throat. Colbert didn't back down, his voice growing more insistent. But don't you see, Joe? Trump and his supporters don't want compromises. They want victory at any cost. They're building their power on division, on a politics of hate and fear. In his world, there's no place for those who don't share his views, and that's what people don't understand. You want to fight for values? Yes, but Trump is using his methods to conquer this nation, and he won't stop until he wins completely. Biden's tone grew more resolute, even aggressive. He can try, but I won't let him break what makes America strong, Stephen. It's not just about politics. It's about humanity, about how we treat each other. Trump might win elections, but what happens to the country when all this hate and polarization reach their peak? He himself is a threat to the nation he wants to dominate. You're asking how I plan to act? I'll fight for America's future. I'll stand with those who need justice, no matter whether it's popular or not. The room grew quieter, and the air became even heavier. Colbert changed tactics, pausing before his next question. Are you really ready for that? Trump isn't just president, he's becoming a symbol of the new order, and all his actions have one goal: to strengthen his position, each time widening the gap between people. How do you plan to stop this? What's your plan? Biden looked at him, ready for the fight, and his voice sounded firm, almost like a promise. My plan isn't just political steps, Stephen. It's a fight for morality and for the country we all deserve. Trump may govern the state, but he can't govern our spirit. We must restore human dignity and start rebuilding without relying on his ideology. As long as I can speak, I'll stand up for those who have no voice, for those who suffer from his policies. Colbert didn't back off. You're a true dreamer, Joe, he said, almost disdainfully. But don't you think there's no place for idealism in this game? Trump isn't trying to build an ideal country. He's building his empire. And if you don't stop, he'll destroy you like he does with everyone who stands in his way. Joe Biden, not reacting to those words, took a deep breath. Maybe I am a dreamer, but who, if not us, should fight for justice? If we stay indifferent, Trump and his people will take full control, and we'll live in a world where there's no place for truth. I can't allow that. No one dared to interrupt the conversation. Biden and Colbert looked at each other like two rivals, ready for the final fight for truth. The tone of the conversation grew harsh, and every word felt like a challenge. There was no room for compromises in this interview. Only truth and the strength of convictions. Colbert felt that the atmosphere in the studio had reached a boiling point. He wasn't giving Biden a second of peace. On the contrary, his questions became sharper and sharper. Do you really believe that Trump has no control over the situation? That he's not behind the fueling of this chaos? Look around, Joe. Every step he takes is a strategy aimed at using fear to divide the people. And you want to believe that all of this can be changed with just words? You're naive. Biden clenched his lips and paused for a moment. His eyes were burning with inner anger. Maybe I am naive, Stephen. But naivety is what allows us to hold on to the belief that justice and humanity still matter. Trump may manipulate, may sit at the helm and decide who will be on his team. But we must stand for the truth, for what is right, not for what is convenient. If we refuse to fight for this country, we will lose it for good. Colbert laughed bitterly. Oh, you still believe in that idealism? But in Trump's world and the world of his supporters, ideals have no value. They reject everything that doesn't fit their propaganda. What will you do when everyone who opposes Trump just becomes a target? He's not just a politician, Joe. He's a dictator, and you don't see that? Biden's tone grew sharp. I see it, Stephen, and that's exactly why I'm here. Trump can call himself a dictator, but the people won't allow it. If we're not ready to stand up to this tyranny, we'll be giving him the right to rule however he wants. And I won't give up. I won't let him destroy the spirit of this country. Are you serious? Colbert interrupted him again, his voice rising. You plan to make all these calls to action when Trump has all the political power and practically the entire government under his control? Don't you see you're going into this fight empty-handed? The studio fell into a deep silence. The cameras seemed to capture every movement, every word. Biden faced Colbert, his expression uncompromising. I'm going into this fight with the voices of those who want change, he answered calmly, but with immense resolve. And if I have to stand alone, I will still fight, because that's what it means to be an American. That's what it means to be free. I won't let anyone dictate how this country should live, and if I have to stand alone with the truth, I will stand. It doesn't matter how much power Trump or his supporters have. Colbert frowned, and his gaze became so intense that it seemed he wanted to rip every word from Biden. And what do you want to do, Joe? Protest in the streets? Go around all the media? Create a new party? Do you have a real plan, or are you just waiting for everything to change by itself? Biden looked at him, and his voice grew even more determined. I'm not waiting. I will act. I will fight for democracy, for people's rights, for the freedom we must protect. And if that means opposing Trump, if that means standing with those who fear for their future, I will do it. Colbert scowled, and his tone turned more sinister. You really think your fight can win? Trump has already made this personal. He has all the power, all the support from every side, and you're trying to challenge him with what? With ideals? Biden didn't look away. Yes, with ideals. Because in the end, they are what define who we are. If we don't stand for our values, then we won't be the USA anymore. We'll just be another dictatorship. And I believe in an America that defends its rights. Trump may have power, but he doesn't have a right to our soul. And I will stand for what is right. The room was silent. Colbert paused. He understood well that Biden wouldn't back down easily. His fight was not only against Trump, but also against the very concept of power and influence in politics that threatened democratic ideals. Colbert didn't know who would win, but one thing was clear. This was not just a political debate. It was a battle for the soul of the nation. Biden and Colbert left the studio, and the silence that followed their heated argument filled the entire space. The cameras had already been turned off, but their words still hung in the air. Biden, though tired, couldn't shake the feeling that his fight was just beginning. Colbert, though he had won the evening in the sense that he had asked the sharpest questions, understood that sometimes even the boldest political statements could leave a bigger mark than the harshest criticism. As soon as the studio doors closed behind them, Biden sighed. You know, Stephen, you're wrong when you say it's all in vain. People will fight. They've already started. Colbert simply nodded, looking at him with a heavy expression. I have no doubt, Joe. I just don't know if it's enough. Trump won't give up. Biden didn't respond right away. It seemed like he was contemplating every word. His voice was soft but firm. But if we don't fight, what will be left? Just an empty sound when everything falls apart? No, Stephen, we can change this. We must change this. Colbert seemed to have no answer to that. He simply nodded, his gaze clouded, as if he were thinking about the next step in this all-encompassing political marathon. Months later, as Biden and his allies began organizing new campaigns and the political situation in the country became more tense, It became clear that this was not just an argument between two people. This was the beginning of a new phase in the fight for the soul of the nation, for rights and freedoms. Trump, of course, remained a powerful and unpredictable leader, but it was these moments, when leaders stood firm on their principles, even when it was difficult, when it was hard to find support, that determined whether democracy would stand. The fight continued, and each step Biden took toward change made him more determined. He didn't give up, even when everything seemed hopeless. And perhaps it was this unwavering resolve that was the only thing that could change the course of events in the near future.